Can you imagine how hard, exhausting, and dangerous the life of a miner was in the Middle Ages? No helmets, no modern machinery, just bare hands, a hammer, a chisel, and darkness. Every day, they descended into narrow, damp tunnels where a single breath of dust could scar their lungs for life. Every swing of the pick could be their last. What did medieval mines look like? And how much did miners earn? What did they extract? And what did a typical day look like? That's what we'll uncover today. Welcome to Horologium Historia. Let's dive in. The Middle Ages weren't just castles, knights, and monasteries. Beneath the surface of Europe, a darker world existed. A world of miners who toiled in cramped shafts and suffocating tunnels, digging out the treasures hidden deep within the earth. In Central Europe, mining began to expand rapidly in the 13th century. Kings soon realized the immense value of underground wealth and began to regulate, protect, and profit from it. A key milestone came with the issuance of the Jus Regale Montanora mining code in the 1300s, which declared that all mines and their profits belonged to the crown. Mining thus became not only a technical challenge, but a political and economic matter of the highest order. Miners extracted many types of raw materials: iron ore, copper, lead, and tin, all essential for making tools, weapons, and building supplies. But above all, their efforts focused on precious metals, silver and gold. Silver was the cornerstone of European coinage and everyday trade. Gold, on the other hand, symbolized wealth, power, and prestige. Its sources were heavily guarded, and its extraction strictly supervised. These metals enriched royal courts and fueled the growth of medieval cities. They also created new jobs and industries. But the miners themselves, those who descended into the depths day after day, did not see much of that wealth. Their world was one of sweat, dust, toil, and ever-present danger. And now, we're going to step into that world. If you enjoy this kind of storytelling and want to hear more tales from history, please leave a like and don't forget to subscribe. Kingdom of Bohemia, town of Kutna, Hora, year 1453. The morning is cold and damp. Smoke rises slowly from the mist-covered valley, from furnaces and forges that never truly rest. The town is only just beginning to stir, but down below, where the miners live and work, the day has long since begun. The air is thick with scent, smoke, sweat, damp timber, and, drifting from a nearby tavern, the tempting aroma of freshly tapped beer. From afar, you can hear the rhythmic creaking of winches hoisting up stone and water from the depths, and the endless clinking of hammers that never fall silent. This is not a city of lords and nobles. This is the city beneath the earth. At the edge of the St. George shaft stands a man, Matthew, a miner like hundreds of others. He carefully fastens a small oil lamp to his belt. The faint flame flickers weakly in the wind. On his back, he carries a sack, inside, a hammer and chisel. Two loyal tools for all who dig deeper into the heart of the earth. Rumor has it they'll go deeper today than ever before. They say a new vein has appeared beneath the old wall. Perhaps silver, perhaps a trap. In the mines of Kutna, Hora, you never know. Matthew casts one last glance at the daylight, then disappears into the black maw of the mine. How did medieval miners descend into the depths of the earth? Today, we step into an elevator and ride smoothly down. But in the Middle Ages, things were very different. Miners had several ways of entering the mines, none of them quick, safe, or easy. The most common method was climbing down wooden ladders, which were often wet, slippery, and unstable. One wrong step, and a fall from dozens of meters could be fatal. Sometimes these ladders hung vertically inside shafts. Other times, they ran diagonally along the walls. The miner carried an oil lamp on his belt, a bag of tools on his back, and needed both hands just to hold on. Every descent was a small test of courage. Where conditions allowed, miners carved sloped entry tunnels, known as adits or drifts, that could be walked on foot. But even these were far from easy. The terrain was uneven, muddy, and often flooded. Tunnels were so low that miners had to crouch or crawl just to pass through. By the 14th century, larger mines began using wooden winches and pulleys. Miners would be lowered in baskets or on narrow benches tied to a rope. These primitive lifts were powered by human or animal strength. Colleagues on the surface would turn a crank, slowly lowering their fellow miners into the darkness below. But this rope technology was unreliable. A rope could snap, a gear could jam, and death came quickly. Some shafts even included small notches and footholds carved into the rock walls, allowing miners to climb like mountaineers. It was extremely dangerous and demanded strength and experience. All these methods had one thing in common. Every miner had to get in and out by their own strength. And if someone was injured or lost consciousness, they often never made it back to the surface.
I've descended into the mines more times than I can count. But still, every time I climb down that wet, slippery ladder, the same thought flashes through my mind. Will I make it back up today? Down below, it hits your lungs immediately. That mix of damp air, dust, and the stench of burning tallow. Like someone's thrown a wet rag over your face, soaked in centuries of filth. Our oil lamp flickers, its little flame twists like a snake, restless, as if it too wants to escape. I climb slowly, one hand gripping the rung, the other braced against the rock. Every step feels like one closer to death, and yet, for us, it's routine. Just another day. Below, the shaft awaits. The drift, the work. There it's pitch black. The lamp barely lights the wall in front of my face. I crouch, knees pressed into the rock. In one hand, a chisel. In the other, a hammer. I strike. Once, twice, 3 times. Then again. The rock crumbles slowly, breaking apart. Sometimes sparks fly. Next to me, Francis tosses the broken chunks into wooden tubs, like bottomless barrels. Now and then, something glitters among the stone, silver, maybe. But usually, it's just waste rock. Still, we throw it all in. They'll sort it out at the surface. Above us, the winch creaks and groans. One tub goes up, another comes down. Up top, the men crank the handle, pulling the loads with thick rope. All day it turns, like a carousel, and so do our days, work, sweat, darkness, and maybe, a little silver, maybe. You never know what's hiding beneath your feet.
A medieval miner had no access to modern machinery. Everything he dug, broke apart, and hauled out was done by hand, using simple yet ingenious tools. The basic toolkit consisted of a chisel and a hammer. The chisel, a pointed iron spike, was driven into the rock. Then, the miner would strike it repeatedly with the hammer until the stone began to fracture. In tighter spaces where even this method was impossible, other tools came into play. A short-handled pickaxe known as a kraka and a pointed pick used for finer work. Besides manual labor, some mines also employed what was called the fire-setting method. Miners would build fires directly inside the tunnel and let the rock heat for hours. Then they would douse it with cold water, causing the stone to crack from the sudden temperature shock, making it easier to break apart. This method was effective, but it came with risks. It worsened ventilation and released dangerous fumes, so it could only be used in well-ventilated areas. And since absolute darkness reigned underground, every miner had to carry a tallow lamp, a small open flame fueled by animal fat. The flame was weak, but it was enough. The mining tunnels themselves were narrow, low, and irregular. They typically measured about 24 to 36 inches wide and only 3 to 5 feet high. Miners had to work crouched, on their knees, or even lying down. The space was damp, often muddy, and moving through it was utterly exhausting. The walls were roughly hewn and often seeped with groundwater, so the tunnels had to be reinforced. Without proper support, the rock could collapse, burying everything and everyone inside. To prevent that, miners built wooden reinforcements called timber sets, a framework of horizontal and vertical beams that supported the ceiling and walls. In deeper shafts, the entire perimeter was often lined with wood to keep water from soaking in. The excavated rock and ore were then hauled to the surface using winches, pulleys, or horse-powered hoists. Miners would load the stone and ore into wooden tubs or baskets, which were pulled upward on ropes. The winches were turned by hand, usually by several men working together, using brute strength. At larger shafts, horses walked in circles all day long, pulling the loads steadily toward the surface. It was back-breaking, repetitive work that demanded endurance and teamwork, from the miners underground and their helpers above. Ventilation was a vital part of every mine. In confined spaces, oxygen quickly ran out, and fumes or dangerous gases would build up. To combat this, miners dug ventilation shafts, installed air doors to direct airflow, and used large leather bellows to pump fresh air into the tunnels. Mine overseers also dug connecting passages between separate shafts to improve underground ventilation through natural air currents. And what about water? That was enemy number one. If water flooded into the mine, work came to a halt, and a collapse became a very real threat. To drain water away, miners used so-called adit tunnels, long, gently sloping passages that carried water out of the mine. To lift water up from deep shafts, they again relied on winches and horse-powered hoists, and later even water wheels that drove primitive pumps. By the 15th century, mining technology had reached an astonishing level in some places. At Kutna, Hora, miners were working at depths of up to 1,640 feet, an unprecedented achievement for the time. Mining wasn't just brute labor. It was science, craftsmanship, and engineering, and it all held together thanks to the sweat, skill, and courage of those who descended into the darkness each and every day.
Sometimes people think we've gotten used to life underground, that the darkness, the stale air, and the danger don't bother us anymore. But the truth is different. Fear lives down here with us. No one talks about it, but it's always there. When you're crawling through a narrow tunnel and you feel the rock tightening around you, you start noticing every crack, every shift in the air. And sometimes you just feel like you shouldn't be there. Sometimes when I'm hammering away at the rock and breathing in that heavy air, I think of Victor. He was a big man, ate like 4 men, and went down the shaft even on Sundays, if the shift boss allowed it. Once, we were working together in one of the side drifts, under a new support beam. You know that kind of silence that's too silent? That kind of silence only comes right before. It came down, loud as thunder. The supports snapped like twigs, stone everywhere. I was just a few feet away, lucky. We never pulled Victor out. Buried, head pinned under the rock, body bent like a rag doll. It was a quick death, at least I hope it was. Another day, another death. Andrew, a young lad, came from the countryside, didn't even know how to hold a hammer properly. He worked in an old tunnel with no ventilation. Said he felt dizzy, thought it was just hunger. A moment later, he was on the ground. Poison gas, no smell, no warning. When we found him, his eyes were wide open, not from fear, just empty, like a light switched off. Every day, we climb down not knowing if we'll climb back up. The silence that wraps around you in a tunnel, that's not peace. That's waiting.
A miner's life wasn't just hard, it was short. The damp conditions, constant dust, poor ventilation, and daily physical strain all took their toll. Many miners suffered from silicosis, a disease caused by fine dust settling in the lungs, slowly suffocating its victims. Others lived with asthma, chronic bronchitis, or unrelenting fatigue. There were no medical diagnoses back then, but people knew. The coughing, chest pain, and wheezing often meant a slow death. The risk of injury was everywhere. Cave-ins, falls from ladders, burns from oil lamps, crushed limbs from collapsing beams, or suffocation by gas. All were just part of the daily reality underground. The average lifespan of a miner was significantly lower than that of farmers or craftsmen. Many didn't live past 40. And what did they earn for all of it? A weekly wage of around 18 to 20 groschen. That was enough to afford the basics: bread, beer, a bit of meat, and sometimes firewood. It wasn't a life of comfort, but it had one advantage. Miners were among the few who had a steady income. Regardless of how much ore was extracted, they received regular pay, something rare in the Middle Ages. In society, miners belonged to the lower middle class. They didn't have the wealth or property of merchants or townsfolk, but they were respected, mainly for their physical strength, resilience, and courage. In many towns, they formed an influential group with their own rules, shrines, and sometimes even their own guild. A miner was poor, but proud, and you could tell.
Some might think that after a whole day toiling in a hole, you wouldn't have the strength to say a single word. But when you crawl out, take a breath of fresh air, and catch the smell of malt from the tavern, your legs carry you there on their own. We call it the shack. It's a mix of locker room, storage space, and pub. A place where the shift ends and life begins. We sit around the table, soaked in sweat, hands dirty, but eyes alive. Beer flows. Someone orders mead, someone else pulls out dice. Frank sings about how his woman left him, and Victor bangs his mug on the table in rhythm. The guys are laughing, shouting, fooling around. That's how it goes. Underground, we're brothers. By night, we're a little wild. Then someone brings out the ceramic jug with 2 spouts and a shared base. 2 of us drink from it at once. Whoever spills it buys the next round. A test of coordination and an excuse for more laughter. And when the hour grows late and the laughter fades, someone quietly mutters a prayer. To Saint Barbara, the patron saint of miners. Not out of piety, but because we made it through another day. And that counts. One day underground without death is a small miracle.
A miner's life didn't revolve only around work underground, but even life above ground was shaped by the mine. Many miners didn't own homes. Young or unmarried men often lived in shared barracks near the shafts, simple wooden buildings where they slept, ate, and changed clothes. There was little privacy, but plenty of noise and dirt. Those with families usually rented modest cottages on the edge of the mining settlements. Living space was tight. Several children, a wife, and often extended relatives all under one roof. Household duties were managed mostly by the women. They cooked, washed, and cared for the children, but some earned their own income as well, working as tavern keepers, bath attendants, midwives, or barmaids. Without them, the mining community wouldn't have functioned. Mining settlements were like small, self-sufficient worlds. Alongside the mine, you'd find a butcher, a maltster, a baker, a barber surgeon, even a healer. All of them connected to the miners and their needs. Everything revolved around the mine. What was dug up during the day was washed, toasted, celebrated, or mourned by night. And even though a miner's life was hard and short, it forged strong bonds. Working underground created trust, because down there you had to rely on each other. And that sense of brotherhood carried over to the surface.
At home, it's quiet. Just the crackling of wood in the stove and the breathing of my wife, already asleep. The children curl beneath the blankets, still as stones. I peel off my heavy shirt, wipe the sweat from my face with a rag, and lie down on the straw mattress. My bones ache, my hands are trembling, my head pounds like the turning of the winch, but my eyes refuse to close. Tomorrow, it's back underground, into the dark, the stifling heat, the rock. I lie awake and wonder, how many days like this are still ahead of me? How many of us will come back, and how many will stay beneath the broken beams forever? We don't know how many years we have left, but the ore is waiting beneath the earth. And someone has to bring it out. That is our fate. And come morning, the lamp will flicker to life once more.
Central Europe wasn't just a center of mining. It was also a beacon of technological and cultural innovation. Czech and Slovak miners, Mining engineers and surveyors were among the finest in Europe. They knew how to dig deep shafts, draw accurate mine maps, design ventilation systems, and manage drainage with remarkable precision. It's no coincidence that they were invited to work in Germany, Poland, the Alpine regions, Hungary, and even farther east. And from this environment came a coin that would change the world. The Joachimsthaler, first minted in 1520 in the Ore Mountains of Bohemia. So much silver in a single coin was unheard of at the time. The name thaler eventually evolved in English into dollar, and that's where the American currency gets its name. But the glory of Europe's mines didn't last forever. After 1492, when Christopher Columbus discovered the New World, cheaper silver from the Americas began pouring into Europe. Overseas mines, especially in Peru and Mexico, flooded the market, and the price of European metals dropped. Many Central European mines declined. A new era had begun. But the legacy of those who built the wealth of kings beneath the earth, that lived on. Did you enjoy this journey into the dark depths of the Middle Ages? Support our channel by giving us a like and subscribing so we can keep diving into more fascinating stories from the past together. For now, this is Horologium Historia, signing off.